Hey guys, Nick here, and today we're back with Dale's Tale, that rhymed, with part 19 of Dale surviving the remake. Now, in the last episode, we covered Terminus very extensively, and Morgan going there, saving Bob, Lizzie, Mika with the help of Eastman, and Abraham, Eugene, and Rosita, saving them too. And then Morgan going back to talk to Rick into going to Washington, and both groups going their separate ways, with Eastman going with Abraham, Eugene, and Rosita and all them. And now we're going to see what's happened at Morgan's apartment since then. But before we do, did you guys know, if you haven't already, that there are thoughts about two alternate realities? One in which you subscribe to Nick's Topics YouTube channel, and one in which you don't. Let's set the scene for these two universes. If you don't subscribe to Nick's Topics YouTube channel, you, unbeknownst to you at all, will be drugged and put into a torture trap by none other than John Kramer, aka Jigsaw, aka Billy the Puppet, aka the sick man who started the entire Saw franchise. But if you do subscribe to Nick's Topics, you, before you even know it, will see a very strange portal straight behind you. And when you turn around, you will be able to go in said portal to any reality you wish to go to, either in real life or fiction. It could be what if, it could be anything that you put your mind to. Now, technically, I already live in that world because look at the channel. So, if I were a betting man, I would choose the option to ponder any reality, be it what if or real life, and jump inside that portal. Otherwise, you'd get stuck in a torture trap by none other than Jigsaw, aka John Kramer, aka Billy the Puppet. So, you guys should probably hit that subscribe button if you don't want that unfortunate thing to happen to you. With all that out of the way, let's begin or resume the story. Now, while Morgan is returning back to his apartment with Rick to go see Rick, the militia, and Carl and Judith, Rick is just at the top of the apartment pondering over what Morgan said and thinking about everything that's happened since that fateful day in Woodbury. Pondering everyone he lost, and the thought of being reunited with his kids and everything that's happened. But he also ponders who he's lost most of all. He ponders Sophia, who he failed to save. He ponders Shane, who he failed to reason with. Even Dale failed to reason with him, and it ended up with him dead. And Lori, especially Shane and Lori, because they were the closest to him, and Lori, Daryl, and all those other people in that town. He felt like he should have stayed at Woodbury and not just went out for a simple weapon run. But if he hadn't gone, Morgan would not be here and still be crazy, and it probably would have just ended very differently. He has no idea. But no death, and I mean absolutely no death, matters more than Dale Horvath. Because even though it was touched upon very briefly in What If Dale Survived the original, and What If Eastman Survived pointed upon it more, the moral compasses in the show were very underestimated. If given the chance, these grand people, these people that stood above all in a world consumed by chaos and darkness, Dale saw it for people to still remain in their humanity and not let it get to them. He talked to Rick and them countless times, even if it seemed the situation didn't call for it. And he knew about Shane, about Otis. He knew about everything. He was very perceptive. And more than anything else, besides keeping his humanity, being very friendly, a nice, generous old man, even before he died, he only turned dark a little. The governor had to just take that all away from him, especially Dale. And whenever it all snaps back into reality for Rick, he closes his eyes. And then roars out with this head tilted up to the high heavens. A roar so inhumane, it's not even coherent enough to understand. And then, after yelling this enormous roar, he grabs the closest weapon to him, that of which being an RPG, and is about to point it and shoot it straight in the building. Even though it would kill him and likely injure everybody else, he's not thinking straight. Rick's mind is gone at this point. But not before Carl jumps in, hearing his father yell and being the first closest to him, yelling this inhumane roar and going to see what's wrong with his dad, and then sees that he's got an RPG and is about to literally commit suicide while harming everyone or not killing everyone in the building. He's like, Dad, stop, snap out of it. What are you doing? Rick looks over Carl, snaps back into reality, and is like, oh my God, I was just about to shoot and kill not only myself, but my kids. The one thing I have left. Oh, and before he can even finish his train of thought and snap back into reality fully, he realizes his finger was 2 inches away from fully pulling the trigger of the RPG. But before he can release it, it goes off. He was too late. Carl wasn't in time enough, and Rick was just too fast with his rage and monstrosity. So the trigger gets pulled. Bang! An entirely, amazingly destructive explosion erupts in Morgan's apartment. And the building right at the top going down is instantly consumed by flames. And it didn't come without a cost. Rick was able to survive, but he has plenty burns, scarred and injured, and holding on to the edge of Morgan's apartment side, like the side where they first walked up to it, Rick, Michonne, and Carl. So he lived. He's hanging on. But if you thought that no one died miraculously, for some reason, if any of you thought that, think again. Carl is unfortunately a circumstance here. He is impaled by one of the traps from outside, falling the second that the RPG hit the ceiling, and then impaled through the eye. So if the explosion didn't kill him, if the fall didn't kill him, if the impalement didn't kill him, then getting impaled through the eye and the chest would definitely kill him. And with that, Rick just looks behind him. He just killed his son. Now the only thing left, if she even is alive in there now, is his daughter. But where Rick's mind is, at this point, he's convinced that he's lost everyone important to him. And it was his fault. And now, especially, he let his rage get the better of him. And he's like, I don't care at this point. If I have to die, then it's worth it. I've killed and hurt too many people and destroyed too much. At this point, I deserve to die. And this would be very, very traumatic and hard to watch for anyone concerned. And with that, Rick prepares to embrace his own fate along with his sons and possibly his daughters. But before he falls, a hand grabs him. Grabs his hand from inside the burning building, which, closer and closer, slow by slow, the building from the top down is beginning to get utterly, completely destroyed. And the savior was Morgan. He had come back just in the nick of time to see the explosion and save Rick's life, but he couldn't save Carl in time. Rick, he's still not thinking straight, so he's like, is he seeing things? But Morgan says, no, I'm real, and we gotta get out of here right now. We gotta save everybody in the building. Your daughter is most likely alive. If we couldn't save your son, we gotta save your daughter and everybody else in here. He doesn't even question what's going on. He's like, he's got a bunch of stuff to explain too. So they get out of there with the building slowly but surely crumbling into dust. But luckily, They do manage to get out of there and get survivors, but once again, like Carl, it didn't come without a cost. Pete and Alicia, luckily, were the only two, besides like maybe small militia fighters and stuff, but these are the main two that suffer at the hands of the fire and the burning apartment. But survivors, Judith is gotten out of there with the help from Tara and Mitch, getting Megan out of there too. So, Tara, Mitch, Megan, and Judith, along with Rick and Morgan, obviously, but that's the main thing. And, luckily also, even though it's like the last thing they should worry about, they do manage to scramble 28 to 30% of their weapon cache and everything else of importance in there. But as for the other over 70% of their stuff, yeah, it's burned to the ground. There ain't no way they're saving all of it. Like, come on. I would have to pull major hamstrings to be able to do that. And I'm really going to be pulling major hamstrings, like, regarding characters. But I'm not going to say anything else besides that. But, yeah, you guys get the point. Anyways, after all this, and after everyone is accounted for, besides, the people that aren't, unfortunately, dead, Morgan asks, what happened here? And Mitch, very angrily, considering his brother is dead, along with part of the militia, almost none of the militia is left now. He demands to know, very angrily, what happened. So emphasis on what Morgan just said, except even angrier. Rick just looks down, because his mind is still, he can't process what has all just happened. But then, it comes back to him, and Rick starts bawling his eyes out and just shouts to the high heavens to everybody while just crying and being very upset with himself that I killed my son. First, I kill everyone in the town and Sophia, my best friend, my wife, and now my kid. I have lost my son. And after that, Rick, he's just bawling, and this is even starting to make me feel sad just thinking about this. And not as so much doing this part, but just saying it right now, this would be very traumatic. Like, think about how much this would impact Rick. Like, I don't even want to imagine what that man would go through because of all this. But Morgan, trust me, he knows that this is plenty, like, he wants to tell Rick, dude, this is not all your fault. I'm the one who shot the gun, but he feels like he needs to give Rick time to, like, think for a second, like, collect himself. He needs to mourn for his kid before he, like, goes into anything, like, talking to Rick-wise. As soon as he's kind of sure, after, like, 5 minutes or 8 minutes of everyone collecting themselves and Rick trying to, at least, Morgan decides, hey, you know what? I'm going to talk to Rick and also let him know where I've been and how I was able to get here and what's happened. So he goes up to Rick and asks to talk to him. Rick is just very much against talking or seeing anybody right now, and is just very dark in his own thoughts and just very unresponsive, but he just nods and it's like, all right, where were you at? Why couldn't you get here sooner? But Morgan knows that he doesn't mean what he's saying. He's just very upset. Morgan explains that he had went to Woodbury and got every weapon of the deceased people in the town, including Daryl, Michonne, Dale, and everybody else. Afterwards, he had met a man named Eastman, and together they saved 3 survivors from their old group, that of which being Bob, Lizzie, and Mika, along with 3 other people called Abraham, Eugene, and Rosita, who are all going to Washington to get the cure because Eugene knows the cure, and came back to try and get Rick and everybody in the militia to go. Rick actually gets snapped back into reality, surprisingly really quick, to hear that there are survivors, but honestly, it's not enough. Even if there are survivors, that doesn't change the fact that his kid is dead, and everyone he still really, really was close to is gone. So, pondering what Morgan said, and thinking about going to Washington and all that, Rick stews upon this while burying a proper burial for his son, Carl. And soon enough, he begins to talk to Morgan and actually delve into a deep speech, saying that he can't. And then he talks about Dale, the true reason why he's most upset of all. Not just because of his wife, his son, his best friend, but most importantly, Dale. And how much he meant to him. How much he cared about him. How much Dale cared about everybody in the group. And how perceptive he was. Even in the darkest of moments, Dale never wanted to fling from humanity's side and wanted everyone to be better than the monsters that they were starting to be. And that keeping the humanity in them, it was a choice and something Dale, he didn't want a world beyond that. And nobody would ever listen to him. And true, they did listen to him, but it always ended up backfiring on them. And Rick wishes that he would have ignored and yet not ignored him. In the moments that really counted for it, true, they lost many people because of what Dale has said. But at the same time, Dale was he could never say no to him. It was like, Rick just says that he wishes he could have done more, stayed at Woodbury. But then Morgan would have still been crazy. He says this to Morgan. And he honestly wishes that Morgan would have just gone with him from the start. But even that, he couldn't tell what would have happened then. He doesn't blame it on Morgan, especially saying that you might have been the one to shoot the bullet, but I'm the one who left the town. If it weren't for me leaving, every person in that town would have still been alive. But you probably would have been down a darker path. But I can't be down a darker path. I've lost so many people I care about, everyone that's close to me. So going along with this Washington thing, I feel like I might just end up like you. And just end up more crazy than I've already become. Losing everyone that I care about. And don't try to talk me out of this, Morgan, but I have to follow my own path. Tell Carl and Judith that I'm extremely sorry. I have to leave. Morgan is instantly against this. Like, Rick, you can't leave your kids. You risked everything after Woodbury to be reunited with them with that guy Martinez. And you're the one that saved me from the dark side. We can work this out. You forced me out of it with your own dark side. But Rick stops him right then and there saying, I can't! And this would be very like Morgan talking to Rick in season 3 of the original when Rick tried to get Morgan to go to the prison with them and everything. This would be very much like that. And saying that, Morgan, I can't. But Morgan doesn't stop. He says, he can't blame himself for becoming a darker person. He can't. That's what the apocalypse does. And if Rick is to shelter away from that, even for Dale's sake, he gets it. But that kind of prowess and anger, we need that most of the time, even if we don't. And Morgan says that he went to another place that Rick definitely thinks that he definitely thinks Rick should know about. And Rick's like, where? How could this pertain to what we're talking about? And why should I care? Morgan begins to explain he went to put down Dwayne. He said that Dwayne was bit, but he never said where he ended up or if he killed him. He went back to Atlanta to put him down for good, right before he went back and saw the burning building. That was in the vicinity, and he was able to get back there in time. That's why he couldn't save his kid, because he had to put down his. And Morgan deeply apologizes for that. But like he said, Rick pulled him out of his darkness, with his own darkness. So, Rick shouldn't feel bad for this. They've come through everything. to be reunited with each other and losing the people that they've lost, but they can't just turn away after everything. That will just make it like it's square one. Like, Rick is in Morgan's place and Morgan's in Rick's place. That's what Morgan says to Rick. If he goes, he'll be no better off than when Rick found him. So, he has to be here. Even if he only has his daughter left, he needs to stay. And by the way, I made a Carl mistake earlier saying tell Carl and Judith I'm sorry. It's Judith. My bad. For anyone, just stay tuned and I'll say I corrected that mistake. Anyways, Rick is like, I can't. I'm sorry, but I can't. He ponders what Morgan said, but he just says that he can't. Even if it results him turning darker, he doesn't care. He just doesn't want to be dark around his daughter. The only thing in this world that he has left. He's killed, and every time someone relied upon him, they ended up dead. Sophia, Shane, Lori, Dale, Daryl, Carl, everybody. And he says to Morgan, he doesn't want his daughter to die, and he doesn't want him to die. So, he has to go. Whether he dies on his own or not, he doesn't care anymore. He just wants to be on his own. He doesn't really care. And now, he tells the actual, fix thing to tell Judith that he's sorry. Not Carl, because like I said, I made a mistake there for anyone who would correct that. And with that, he begins to leave when he hears a voice behind him. A very, very familiar voice. Rick, leaving without saying goodbye to us? That ain't no way to treat your family. And then he hears a few other little laughs with this particular comment because they all knew when Rick would turn around, he would be devastated to see who it is, in the good way. So Rick, hearing this voice and hearing the little giggles or laughs, he begins to turn around very slowly, and who these figures are would etch into his brain as very mind-blowing. Daryl, Glenn, Maggie, Tyrese, and Sasha are all standing at the entrance of where Morgan's apartment was, all looking beat up, tired, but alive. How in the world did these 5 come to be alive? And if these 5 are alive, what happened to everybody else? Are they truly dead? Or were there more survivors than we accounted for? And that's where we leave things for the moment. I promised you a serious plot twists along with the dark ending, didn't I? Well, we're at that part, 6 parts later from the dark ending, and we're at that part. So, I hope you guys really enjoyed this episode, because believe me, this will probably be in the top episodes of this series, to my knowledge. If it doesn't become like that, then you guys are just underestimating the potential of this episode in the series. But I hope you guys enjoyed nonetheless. Stay tuned for the next episode, and I'll see you then.